Hello and welcome back to our daily encouragement channel. My name is Lewis. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, we take the Bible and try to provide you with a verse or two or five, depending on what comes up, verses that are intended to be daily encouragement for you as you go through your day. The Bible tells us that as Christians, we're supposed to encourage one another, not be judgy or critical, but figured the best thing to do is just take verses and make them applicable for you today. Over the last few days, what we've been talking about is the role of the pastor. Actually, the qualifications as set in 1 Timothy chapter 3. And we've been doing this for quite a few videos, and hopefully we're almost down to the end. We've gone over verse 1, talking about the importance that a pastor should see in the role of serving as a pastor. Verse 2 gave us some ideas: being blameless, husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, good behavior, hospitable, teaching, a good teacher. Verse 3, not given to wine, no striker, not gritty, a filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous. Verse 4 was the last video, verse 4 and 5 technically. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Verse 4 is where we're starting at. I'm thinking, getting ahead of myself. But verse 4 is where we're going to start. It says, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Now, when we look at that passage and you get the idea there of he rules his house well. I pause here because I've known preachers whose children have struggled with their Christian walk after they get out of the house, and people wonder, well, is this a reflection of the leadership they were under, or maybe even while they were in the house they did something that we'll call it a public sin of some sort, or something to that effect. Does that mean he can't serve in that pastoral role? This is my opinion on it, because obviously, as we look at it, it says he ruleth well his own house. When it comes to what you believe is a good demonstration of someone ruling their house well, hopefully you're using biblical determination, not judgmental, not expecting perfection, but understanding. A pastor is a human being, and his children are human beings. And sometimes we elevate the expectation of the children because they are the pastor's kids. But you got to understand, they're still children. They can still struggle with the same sins that the layman's children can struggle with. And so I'm not here to sit there and put this great heap of expectation upon the pastor's kids. But what is it that I see that this passage is saying? It says that he demonstrates the idea of good leadership ability. There's a recognition by his children that he's the authority of the house. Not that he's the arrogant authority. It's never that. The Bible teaches God-given authority, and as God looks at the family, as God looks at the Christian family, and the expectation is for the dad to lead that home. And so here we have the pastor that's going to be leading his flock at the church. There should be a similar dynamic that the pastor does lead at home. Now, uh, I'm not a marriage and family counselor, so when I make this next comment, understand that's not how I'm trying to come across. But in the relationship between a husband and wife, there's the idea of a submissive wife. I hesitate to start this because this is a big rabbit trail, so I'm going to try to keep this short. In that submission does not make the person weaker. Submission actually at times shows the person to be a stronger person, because submission is not saying I'm less than. Submission is saying I understand there has to be one authority, one person that's looked at with the final choice, the final decision making. And in a Christian family, the Christian household, that responsibility is put by God upon the husband, upon the father. So when it rules well his own house, it's the idea that there's proper authority and a proper understanding that God puts this responsibility and looks at this as I put the dad, the husband, as the responsible party. And so when it says that he ruleth well his own house, it's an understanding that he is the authority in the house. He's the I don't want to say the responsible party. I know many families where the husband is the primary breadwinner and he works long hours. And so the mom's at home taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, and honestly taking care of a lot of the household duties where it comes to certain bills that come up. They're the finance person because the dad is out working. I know this is less normal now than it used to be, but I do know of families that do that, and the mom ends up being almost more of the backbone or the brain because she knows everything that's going on. However, the in that situation, the husband doesn't, if it's proper, the husband doesn't domineer over the wife and like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. It is a team effort. I'm big on sports, and one of the things I always encourage people to learn about sports is that it helps you to understand what the bigger picture is, the bigger goal, so that when you get into a work environment, when you get into honestly a church environment, you understand that the greater good is not what's best for you, it's what's best for the group. In a team setting, you may have a person that's a great player, but if they're so greedy that they eliminate the other players from participating, you're going to find it pretty lonely, and those teams don't succeed. Yeah, the one individual player may have he may show himself to be a great individual performer, but not as a great teammate, and that reflects. Take it all the way back to the home. As a representation of a home, things are supposed to be orderly, things are supposed to be done decently and in order, is how God expects his church to be. So, how is the house of the pastor? Again, we're not talking perfect. His child, he could have a child that's loud and maybe obnoxious, and we can put that expectation. But what should happen is that when you look at the structure of the pastor and you look at the structure of his house, he has rule over his house. And then it mentions having his children in subjection with all gravity. So when we looked at that word of subjection, it's the idea of submission or obedience. Again, when we look at children, it's very easy for us to just be like, you need to do this because I'm your dad. But I believe when the children understand the why, even if the why is because dad tells us this is what needs to be done, that's fine. That's a great why. But there are times where I don't think it hurts you to let your child know his place or her place in the scope of the family, because every part of the family has an important role in the success of that family. If you look at the human body, there are small parts of your body that if they were not there, you would hate to go through life. Could you do it? Yeah. Could you do it well, even? Yeah. But could it be more difficult than it would be if that part was there? Yeah. For an example, if I took your pinky off your hand, could you operate with just the four fingers on your hand? Of course. We've seen people do it. Would it be a little more difficult? Yeah. And you'll notice it at the most odd times. Same thing with your pinky toe. There'll be moments where you'll be like, okay, I'm still okay, but you'll lose some of that balance you get from the pinky toe. It's an amazing thing. So when it says subjection, look at the way the verse says. Having his children in subjection with all gravity. That word gravity is the idea of seriousness, dignity, honor. It's helpful. It's like understanding that what's deserved due reverence. Understand, I like the idea that my kids obey me because I'm dad, but I'd much rather want obedience because they love me and they understand what the expectation is. So, how is your pastor when it comes to that? Now, we got about a minute left, so I'm debating if I want to keep going, but I will. We look at the next verse and we'll go a little bit long just so we can finish up this section. So verse number 6 says, not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. All right. So, not a novice, not a rookie. The idea, not a new convert, someone that's new to the faith. Now, can God do a work to make that new Christian have the ability to lead a flock? He could. It's entirely possible. I'm not going to deny it. But we're talking about the qualifications here. You want to have a pastor in place for longer than a short time. You want them to be long standing. And so, what occurs if you get somebody new in there, it's easy for them to make a mistake early on. Not that the experienced pastor couldn't make a mistake, but this person hasn't had a chance to learn, to develop. There was an opportunity I had one time to lead a team, and I had been newer to the group, and I know I was also new to the industry, new to the role as a whole. And so when I took over, I did what I was used to doing the role before, which was similar in expectations. What changed was that now I was dealing with a more experienced group of people, and I had to be very careful. It actually was harder, not because the work was harder, but because the expectation of the people I was dealing with. And there were many times I had to go and say, I'll look into that for you. I'll check into that for you. And there was a lot of, I didn't have any answers. I didn't know. And that came from being a rookie at it, a novice. Here we have someone that's new to the Christian faith, and they could be strong enough, but the Bible here says you don't want them being a novice. But then let's look at the why. Why don't you want a novice in there? Look what it says. Lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. The idea of being lifted up with pride, it's to be conceited or foolish. Some of the things I saw this and I started laughing. It said to blow smoke up in the air, to like a cloud, being muddled, a blindness resulting from poor judgment. So you look at the idea of having this pride, because what is pride? Pride is a confidence in yourself. Now, usually when we mention pride, it's either a false confidence or it's an overinflated confidence. It's the idea that there's too much of it. See, there's nothing wrong with being self confident or confident in the abilities that you have. It's another thing to be overly confident, so confident in yourself that you don't rely on the things you're supposed to rely on. As a Christian, our faith and our trust is supposed to be in God. If we put too much trust in ourselves and what we can do, then that's when the Bible says, let him that thinketh he stand take heed lest he fall. And it also says, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So here's this new convert that's suddenly in a pastoral role, and we've talked about how high and, I don't want to say high and exalted, but how high the duty is, how important the duty is, how special the duty is. And now you're going to put this novice in place. It's very easy for them to get puffed up, to have that cloudy vision and think more of themselves than they ought. So the Bible says, not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation, the judgment of the devil. You know that the prideful heart is going to be pushing themselves away from God because they're depending on themselves, and it'll put them right into the hands of the devil to be used. All right. One more verse and we'll go ahead. I know we've gone long. I thank you for sticking with me. So what does it say, the last verse here, about the pastor? Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. So the idea of must have a good report of them which are without. The idea here that I was able to find is the non-Christian. How do they look at your pastor? See, I know I'm going to just speak of my pastor. I know that when you see him in dealing with people, he's got a very good report of people that are not Christians. Why? Is it because he's super smart? I think he's smart, but that's not why. It's because he's kind. He's very kind. He's very compassionate. He reflects what I believe a Christian should reflect. Doesn't get walked over, but he shows these characteristics. What is your pastor's reputation? Is he egotistical? Is he egocentric? Is he fall into the condemnations of all the characteristics here? Is he blameless? Does he show good behavior? Is he hospitable? Is he a good teacher? Is he not given to wine? Is he a striker? Is he greedy, a filthy lucre? Does he show patience? Is he a brawler? Is he covetous? Does he have a good reputation of his family being, I don't want to say well run, but how are his children? All these things come together, and there's an outside world that may stop going to your church and you lose the ability to witness. Because why are we here? We're here to worship God and to tell others about Him. If you can't do that because people go, oh, you go to that church? Yeah, I know about your pastor. And what they say is true. Because, I understand there are rumors that can be existing out there. Maybe someone has one bad experience and they've developed a negative impression. I'm not going to sit and hold that against a pastor. But if it's something like, no, there's multiple people that all say the same thing because they've seen the way he acted at a supermarket, or the way he acted at a public event or something, or when they come to the church and they try to talk with the pastor and he's very not hospitable and he's not patient, and you see covetousness in the way that he preaches, and it's not a good teacher, and they see these characteristics, that person can drive people away, and your church doesn't grow like it should. Look, if they don't like the fact that he's preaching, thus saith the Lord, then you know what? That's them not liking the Bible, not necessarily the preacher. But if they don't like because he sat there and every week he preaches on, giving money to the pastor and giving goods to him, and they don't preach on sin and judgment and preach the whole counsel of God from the Bible, that's not a good pastor. And I've been hesitant to say that phrase because I sound judgy when I say that, but that's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, according to this passage, if he doesn't meet these qualifications, there may be something wrong, and you may need to start praying and seeing, is this the person I want leading me, leading my family? Now, you might say again, Lewis, this is supposed to be encouragement. How is this encouraging? Again, take the time to understand the importance of that pastoral position. And you may sit there and go, Lewis, I have a great pastor that does all these things, meets all these qualifications. Then you should be encouraged to know that God has you in a great place. And what you should remember is to go and to thank them just for being who they are, who God called them to be, and then to remember to pray for them. Remember to take the opportunity to lift them up before God so that they can keep true to these qualifications and they can be the person they want to be. If you sit there and you say, Lewis, I don't have that person, as I've been looking at it and listening and reading through here, I don't believe I have that person. Well, then be encouraged to know that it's not too late. You can move into into a prayer mindset and say, God, I just, from studying your word, not because Lewis said this, I don't ever want it to be, well, Lewis said this and I'm going to do what he says. I am not God. And what I'm trying to do is show you what I've seen. So what we do is we take and we say, God, I see this. I understand this. I want to have a pastor that meets these qualifications because I feel like it'll help me grow. Because I feel like in the last day, week, months, years, I've not grown like I could have grown because I'm not in the right place. Be encouraged to know it's not too late. And there are churches out there, and you can find one of those churches. And if you can't find one, maybe that's a call for you to start working on trying to get one started. You may go, Liz, I can't start a church. You can't, but God can, and they can use you. Anyway, I'm almost at 20 minutes, so I'm going to stop. I thank you so much for sticking with me through it all. I think it's super important to have a pastor that's the godly man of God to lead my family, to lead me, and to help me walk the walk that I should be walking. Hope you've been encouraged today. I know it's like I said, it was super long. Uh, Thank you for listening or watching. Please, if you are feeling so led, like the video or the audio if you're doing the audio. Subscribe to the channel whereby you're watching or listening. It'll just help me out to know that there's actually people out there listening and being encouraged. Well, until the next time, when we're going to start something new, we'll find a different verse, maybe not a different topic, but a different verse and get to our daily encouragement. But until then, may God help you go through your day. Take care.